All right, so let's go ahead and get started for today. We'll go over some of our housekeeping options while we wait for everyone else to finish joining the meeting. But welcome to today's webinar on email customization. This is a part 2 webinar to our webinar that we had just before the American Thanksgiving holiday last week. So the week before last week, we covered the email distribution options and email configurations. Today, we're going to be actually going over like crafting an email body and the actual content of the emails you can send out using the ClubExpress emailing tool. Before we get into too much detail, let's go ahead and focus on some of our housekeeping options. So all of your microphones are muted. We do ask you to keep them that way through the webinar. If you have questions throughout, we have our Zoom chat support, and our team member Samantha is there to answer questions that are related to this webinar throughout the meeting. If you are experiencing any sort of like errors with your emailing tool, that's something you can always send over to support. But try to keep your questions in the chat, and then at the end, any questions that Samantha sees that are pressing or something that we can actually demonstrate a solution for, then we will go over those at the end of the webinar. We also do want to always point you to clubexpress.com/calendar, or you can just go to clubexpress.com and click on calendar in the upper right-hand corner. That will show you our upcoming webinar schedule, and you can register ahead of time. If you have questions that you want to see answered on screen, if you have things that you see a topic coming up that you want to see things get addressed, we always recommend that you go there and register ahead of time, because part of that registration is that we will ask some questions, and you can leave comments saying, please show off this section or that, so that way we can build it into our prep for our webinars. We also put all of the recordings of each webinar and all of our training videos and version announcements on our YouTube channel. You can find that by searching clubexpress.com with the dot spelled out, DOTCOM. So clubexpress.com on YouTube, you'll find all of our videos there. You can also subscribe to our channel. We always say, we don't just ask you to do that simply to bump up our subscriber count, but it's also a really great way to stay up to date with all of our upcoming changes. We have new modules coming out and new versions coming out and updates to existing modules. And anytime that happens, we always put out, video announcements and webinar announcements. And you can see all of those just by keeping it in your subscription feed on your YouTube channel, on your YouTube account. We also love reviews. If you go to clubexpress.com/reviews, you'll see a number of ways to leave reviews for us. We love getting reviews because it helps us, keep other people informed of whether Club Express is the right product for them. It's also a great way for you to just let us know what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong. So just, if you ever have time, please leave us a review. Once you can give us an idea of how you are using the system and how it has worked for you. So that's it for our housekeeping. We can go ahead and start talking about today's topic, which is email customization. We're going to be talking about the different types of email elements, things you can put into an email body like text and images and HTML. We'll talk about how to manage links and documents within your emails. We'll also talk about things like dividers and social media links. There's a whole bunch of different types of elements you can use to build an email. We're also going to go over how to save an existing email as a template, or make changes to templates that you already have, or create new templates. So those are really a time-saving tool you can do to, once you have an email body that you like, you can just reuse that kind of shape over and over. And it also helps people become familiar with the types of emails you send, so they know where to look when you're sending things to them. We're also going to talk about the different ways you can preview an email before sending it out. There are some important distinctions there. Many of you are probably here with very specific questions about, I sent an email and I didn't see it this way or that way. And we'll talk about some of the do's and don'ts and what will and won't work when you're looking and building your emails. And then the last thing we'll go over are some of our email defaults, things like our categories and how to use the view emails page, where people can see kind of an archive of sent emails. So the first thing we're going to go over is the actual elements that you can use when you're building an email. So I'm going to skip over to my next slide here. We're going to talk about the different content types. So when it comes to building the body of an email, there are kind of three primary pieces of content. There's text, which you can use for a whole slew of things. Probably the most familiar kind of email you can send to someone when you're sending someone an email that says, hey, don't forget to come to this event, or any sort of announcement that you have. Text is the, the normal body where you can write and fill things in, but you can also use the text field to put in things like links and changing fonts and all sorts of different types of content in your email for that. So that's kind of our bread and butter of our email tool. We also have options like images or image links or other types of links you can use when you are building an email. So the image tool is very important when you're building an email, and getting sizing right and things like that is something we'll talk about for a moment. But image is one of the kind of other foundational tools for building an email. We do have a third option for kind of general content, and we save this for our advanced users. We'll talk about the element HTML. This is something you'll want to kind of set aside if you're not, versed in HTML code. But if you have someone in your organization that is very familiar with HTML and wants to build a very fancy email, you can actually use an element called the HTML element to build your own kind of advanced emails that way. But if that goes over your head, then you can just kind of ignore that element when we get to it. Then we'll also take a look at links and documents and how you can link to different parts of your website from an email, and also kind of pseudo attach documents. We will talk about the difference, but I'll go ahead and just give you a quick preview. Is, something we get asked a lot is, why can't I attach a document to an email so that they have it in their inbox when we send it? And the short answer is security reasons. The long answer is, when you send an email with an attachment to a lot of people, email providers will realize that an attachment has been sent out. And I'm sure all of you have, had experience with receiving, spam or emails like that, where they send you an attachment and, maybe your web browser, something like that, says, hey, we're worried that this might be, a virus or something like that. And for that reason, we don't allow direct attachment to emails, because if you send out a large number of attachments, most email providers will see that as a potential risk and will instead just not deliver your email. So we block that out to prevent you from accidentally sending an email that gets blocked and suddenly no one is receiving your emails. So we have a workaround for that, where you build a document link, and instead of being attached to the email itself, it gives them a link where it'll take you to the site to download the link. And we'll talk about the different ways you can set that up in your document library to either require a login to see it or not require a login. So we'll go over that as well. Divider is a very simple one. It's just a horizontal line to break up the content of your email. I always recommend that you use those, very liberally, so that you can, really visually separate the content of your email so people know when they're reading a different section. And one last type of element that we'll go over is the social media option. That is something that if your organization has social media links, it's going to pull the links for you from your site. You don't have to put in the content every time you build an email. All you do is just drag that social media link option over. And if you have it set up in that social networking part of your website, it's going to go ahead and appear for you. So without any further ado, I'm going to jump over to my demo site, our Northwest Balloon Club, that many of you are probably familiar with. I'm going to change my screen right now, if you give me just 1 second. All right, so you now should be seeing the Northwest Balloon Club. I'm logged in as our forever administrator, Martin Smith. This is just our test site where we can go and kind of show off some stuff. Right now, you'll see that I'm on the control panel. So if you watched last week, a lot of this is kind of going to be a real quick overview of what we did last week. But in order to get into building an email, we're going to go to the communication sections of our section of our control panel. We will go over to emailing. And to start a new email, we can hit add emailing, or if you have any draft emails, which is what I'm going to start with right here, you can click on the pencil to go into the editor. And I'm going to gloss over this because this is something that we covered last week. If you need to see more about the beginning process of creating an email, I recommend you go back and watch the recording that's on our YouTube channel. It's going to go over how to set up your, basic configuration and your distribution list, but that's not something we're going to cover today. So I'm going to go ahead and go into this draft email. I'm going to click on the pencil right here. And you'll see that we already have our basic information and our distribution list. We have that already set up and already configured. So you'll see here, I have a preset body, and I'm going to go over kind of what I've done here. And then I'm going to start with a blank canvas to show you how to get to this point. So this is kind of a general kind of basic newsletter. I'm not going to do anything too fancy. I'm going to kind of just show you how to build a newsletter. And newsletters, the reason I'm choosing that is because that is one of the most common types of emails that ClubExpress sends out, our monthly communications that we send to our members. So this is a section, and I have done a few elements here. And when I was showing you earlier the basic content types, text and image, the reason I focused on those instead of focusing on each individual element here is because all of these elements that are available to you are either, one of the things that I mentioned earlier or a combination therein. So you'll see on our elements section here over on the right-hand side, you'll see different types of text, 2-column text, 3-column text, image and text, 2 images and 2 columns of text. All of these are just combinations of text and images, including our hero section. So that's the first place I'm going to go to. I know it's down here kind of further down, but that's the first one I'm going to talk about today, because the hero section is a very useful element for creating a header for your email. When you drag the hero section over into the body of your email, it's going to drop a hero section element. I'll drag this up using those little dots. And the hero section is going to give us 2 different boxes to fill in. It's going to give us an image box, and it's going to give us a text box. And so I'll go ahead and I'll use the one that I've already built as an example. In this example right here, I have a simple image banner, and this is pulling from the web graphics of my website. And then below that, I have a text section where I can fill in text. Once I've dragged this over, if I want to make changes, all you have to do is click on the pencil icon that will show up in the upper right of each element. And then you get a few options. You get your properties, and then you get what you want to upload. If I'm starting from fresh, you can choose either insert photo or insert image. I usually lean toward image because that's going to allow you to upload images directly from your computer and also grab images from your web graphics. Whereas photos is kind of more for things like profile photos or things that you're pulling from photo albums. So more often than not, image is where I land when I'm needing to pull in some sort of graphic for an email. And you'll see this select an image tool. And those of you who have used our page builder or have used email building before, this will be a very familiar tool to you. This is your image selection tool. And all you have to do is either search for the file you're looking for. So in this example, I can click show files. And right now I'm not searching for anything. It's going to show me all of the files that I have in my web graphics for this site. And I can browse through the different pictures and pick one that I want to use for my banner. And, maybe I could say I want to use this image, but once I find the image that I want, I would hit select, and it'll fill in the image that I have selected in that section up there. The other option when you're choosing the select an image tool is this button down in the lower left-hand side that says upload a new file. If you click this, it's going to give you the pop-up window that says upload web graphic. And this will add a new image from your computer by clicking browse to use a new image on this email builder. And it'll then be stored in your web graphics for future use. You only need to upload it once here. Once you've uploaded it, it will show up on the list that you find here by searching for files. So if I was searching, for this col2 file, I can just search for col2. And it's only going to show me that file because I'm searching for it by name. It can sometimes be difficult to find files by name if you don't know the name of the file off the top of your head. And that's why when I recommend, going back and watching our training videos and our webinars about web graphics, because keeping those organized by folders can sometimes help you organize things. So maybe you have images that you use regularly for emails, and you can create an email graphic folder, and that way you always know you can go grab the images you're looking for from that folder, and you're not mixing them in with the images you use for your website. So that's kind of the basic gist of our image section. You can also use the tool to drag and resize images. By default, they will stretch to as big as they can. So this is an image that is wide enough to fill the entire space, and so it's going to spread out to fill all the way from the left to the right of our email. For text, when you click this pencil for text option down here, it's going to give you a pretty simple text editor. And you'll notice when I open this up, my text is aligned to the left, but my content, when we preview it, is aligned to the center. And there is a reason for that, and I'll get to that. And the reason for that is element styles. So when you are building an email, you can put your text in here in any format you like, and there's actually a way for us to override it outside of this tool. So when you're building a text field, you have a few different options. You have your standard text editors up along the top corner over here. And then you have, the actual body of the text that you're filling in. This is a place where I'm going to take a break and talk about the limitations of email building. A lot of people are tempted to build the text that they want in a more familiar tool, such as, Microsoft Word or PowerPoint or something like that. And then they want to copy and paste that exact formatting into an email. You should be aware that that won't always work. And in fact, it will regularly cause issues, because when you copy something from Microsoft Word and paste it into this email builder, it's going to bring Word specific formatting over when you paste it in. When you send that email out, most of that Microsoft Word specific formatting will get stripped out, not necessarily by ClubExpress, but will get stripped out by the email recipient. So things like Microsoft Outlook and Gmail don't view content the same way that Microsoft Word does. And so that formatting that you spent the time building there and pasting in may not show up. And for that reason, a lot of the limitations that you'll see when you're building an email, we put in place intentionally, because they are types of formatting that we have made available that we know that things like, again, Gmail, Yahoo, AOL, Outlook, we know that they will be able to understand that type of formatting, and you're more likely to get your email as intended sent out. So this is our simple text editor again, and you can just type in whatever text you want. You'll see I've made the text for December newsletter a lot bigger. I've left the board election text just plain. I haven't added any formatting to this. And the only formatting I've added to this was to make the text 48 point and make it bold. You can get as fancy as you want with this with all of these different font tools. You can change the color of it. I'll go ahead and change our color to maybe a dark blue. You can change your alignment from here. And you can also do things like adding in links. Again, this is another pop-up that we'll talk about further in depth in just a little bit, but this is the build a link tool that you'll see also in our page builder and all over ClubExpress. This is that same build a link tool you'll see everywhere. We're going to go in depth on how to build a link in just a minute here. And this is also where you can strip formatting out. So that's something I do want to talk about. If you have content from a different website or from Microsoft Word that you do end up pasting in here for one reason or another, if you do paste from somewhere else, that's still okay. But if you do so, I would recommend one thing, which is highlight all of your text and come over here to this little paintbrush icon on the right-hand side. And this is going to let you strip all formatting. You can strip different types of formatting, like strip word formatting or different elements. I usually say stick to this strip all formatting, and it's going to take the text that you pasted and take it back to just plain text. And then you can, from there, apply the formatting tools that are within this toolbar up here, and you will be more confident in that you can be more confident that what you intend to send out will be what they receive. If you just paste it, again, I know I'm driving this point home a little hard, but it's something that we get asked quite a bit. But if you paste directly from, a PDF or something like that, a lot of times that formatting will not get sent out. And we get emails and comments about that quite often. So that's just something to be aware of. So that is our text editor, and that is our hero section. And you'll see I've used that hero section just to build the top part of our email. I can move these sections around. I can rearrange them. You saw me do that briefly by grabbing on these little dotted sections. And that is how we can rearrange the elements in our email. And we can add, drag that up to the top, and we can add more elements by clicking on an element that we want out here and dragging it over. The initial body of the email that I've built here, I just used a simple one column text. And we're going to talk about a specific option that we have available to us. We talked about this briefly last week when we were talking about the email basics. But if we go up here to this email basics page, one check mark that you have an option is this personalization allowed. So we talked about that a bit on our previous webinar, but I'm going to show you what that functionally does. This will let us do things like filling in names and information about people we are sending an email to. So if we leave that checked and we save this option, when we come to our text editor, you're going to see an extra tool here. Now, if you have that unchecked, this will not show up, but you have this select tag option, and you'll see all sorts of different information fields here from, their member data, all of their address work, all of their membership fields. And what we can do is we can select any one of those fields and automatically fill it in for us. So you'll see I've already done hello first name here. And if I were to take that out, the way this works is I can put my cursor where I want that tag to go. So I'm going to say I'm going to put it right here in between the space and this comma when I'm sending out my generic email. I'm going to say hello first name, and I'll say insert tag. And whenever you insert a tag, you're going to get these two tilde, the content that you want to fill in, and then tilde again. So tilde is just those little squiggly lines that you can fill in. And once you have content like that there, you want to leave this alone. You can change things like making it bold or making it italicized if you want. You can change the font size, but you don't want to change the actual text of this or it won't function properly. You want to leave the text here alone. But what this is going to do is whenever our system sends out an email and it has these little squiggly lines on either side, if this matches information in our database, we're going to fill it in for whoever we're sending it to. So if I was to send this to, myself, it would fill in hello, Devin. And that way it's a personalized email for me, even though I'm sending it to 100 people. I don't need to send this individually for each person. And then the content of our email, I've just left a generic body of our email. Some of this is just copy and pasted Latin, just to fill in the body here. So that's how you do the personalization tools. There's a whole lot of different, I'm going to preview of some of these options here. There's a whole lot of different options like first name and last name. You can fill in people's addresses, their zip code. So whatever your needs, if you need to, include membership information, you can also fill in things like the location of your own club. If you're telling people how to get to the club itself, if you need to fill in information about your club officers, if you need to leave a signature on it with the director's information, but you're not the director yourself, you can just fill these in and it'll pull from the database on your website. You can fill in all sorts of different types of information in the text of your email. And you can just hit insert tag with your cursor wherever you want it to go. And it's going to insert that information there. The next type of element we have on here is just our little divider tool. And you'll see it just gives us a little horizontal line. And that's all it is. There's no real customization. You can just kind of, leave it as is. It's just a horizontal line to break up our content. And this is a kind of style of newsletter that I'm going to preview here that breaks up the content. And then it has the content side by side, alternating with images and text. And this is a nice way to visually separate the different kind of content that you're showing off. So you'll see here, we have information about our upcoming board elections with a nice little ballot box image. And then we have information about our budget with a budget image, and I'm alternating left and right. And these are just our simple 2-column text right, 2-column text left to alternate that back and forth. And so those are our, an example of our elements where it comes pre-configured to accept an image and pre-configured to accept text. And then you can do the opposite down here with the 2-column text left where the text is on the left. So to that point, earlier I mentioned that you notice that the alignment here is off. Before I move on to a different type of element, there's one more thing to talk about with our text options, which is the overriding format. So if we look at this section back up here, I'm going to come back up for 1 second. This is a different font, and this is a smaller font than what we see in the actual preview. And the reason for that is our element style. So here we have our elements that we can drag over to our email body. And on the right-hand side, we have our element style, and you get a whole bunch of different options here. This element style will let us override the content of our element with other types of formatting. So here we have background color where we can change the background from white to, this keeps popping up down below. I need to talk to someone about that. We can change the background to, let's say, red. And once we've changed that option, we need to hit apply. And now the background of that is going to completely change, and it's going to override with a whole bunch of different tools. But I don't want the background red. I want the background white. And I can apply again. And you'll see here the element style that I've chosen will then apply. There's also things like border thickness, border color, and those borders are just a border around the edge of this element. So I can do a border of, let's do red again. And now it has a red border that surrounds this element all the way around. The top part of that border gets hidden behind here, but when we preview the email later, you'd be able to see the border that goes all the way around this element. We also have things like our different font controls. And this is where we can come in and say, I want my font here to actually be impact font. And I want my generic font to be, let's say, 16 point. And if we apply that here, you'll see it changes the font for everything in it, and it changes the default font to 16. You will note that the font above is still larger. That's because if I do changes here manually, if I make this font, let's say this font needs to be 36 font, setting that here will still take precedence on the outside of this tool. But if I leave the font in here unchanged, then there's no pre-applied style to this element, and the choices that I make in the element style will then take over. So if I make the font manually larger here, my font changes here won't apply. But if I leave it unchanged from my normal plain text that I typed in, then this will have the ability to change that font size. And I can say, make this 18. And so that's where we can come in and make those changes. This is also where we can change our alignment options. So this is where I can say, instead of aligning to the left, I want it to align to the center. And I can also change the color of my text. So I can say I want this to be, a dark blue. And I can keep coming back here and clicking on this element to make further changes. Padding here, this is one that I usually recommend you leave alone. This adds an extra bit of space around the edges of the content. So you'll see, like, normally this content has a bit of an edge, a little gap here. If you take the padding out, then this will butt up right against the edge of our element. And I usually want to keep that, you want to keep that padding there to make sure that things aren't kind of touching each other accidentally. So you're not overlapping images or things like that. So this padding helps keep all of your content separated. You do have the option to remove it or make it wider if you want. But let's go ahead and set this back to the way it was. I don't necessarily want a border there. It's not very pretty. And I would definitely prefer, a more simple font, like, let's do sans serif. And so we'll leave it as a dark blue here, but that's how you can come in here to element styles and place different types of styles on the element. A note about background color very quickly, though. A lot of email providers will not honor this background element style. So when I send this to something like Gmail or Yahoo, they will oftentimes take this background color out, and there's really nothing we can do about that. Whenever they see something that is styled as background color, they're going to just cut it out. Unfortunately, it'll leave the content of your email just fine. But I usually recommend people to leave the background of an email white. And if people are viewing an email, in a dark theme or something like that, the background will adjust to fit and it'll change the font colors as needed. But if you manually set like a red or a green background, a lot of times it might not get delivered correctly to certain email providers. So now we can move on to a few different element types. You'll see the type of element type is listed in the left corner. There are two different types of links that we can choose when we're looking at our elements. There's an element down here that's called link/button. And this is where you can put in a link, a hyperlink to a specific location on your website. And I promised to talk about the different options for links earlier. And so this is where I'm going to talk about that. This is just where you can build a link directly to any location that you really want. Something to keep in mind, you can build links within text fields. If you use the link element, this whole horizontal section here is just going to be a link. And so this is a great way to end your email or point people towards, an event registration. But when we click on this pencil here for our link button, this gives us our little build a link tool. And when you're building a link, it's going to ask you two different types of section. You get these two boxes. You'll get link type and address, and this is where that link is going. And then you get link properties, and this is what the link looks like. And those can be different. So, sometimes people will say, if we point a link to Google, we can actually have it say Yahoo, even though they're different things. It'd be a little bit dishonest, but you can do it if you want. When you choose your link type, you have a few different options to choose from. And again, this is something we go over more in depth in our page builder tools, but I'll highlight a few. So if you want to point people to an upcoming event, you have the option here, say future event. And then you can choose your event category. And I can say, I want people to come to my Balloons of Love on, February 11th, 2023. If I want my link to say something other than specifically the title, I can change this to, let's just say Balloons of Love 2023 instead of the full date here. And if I save this right now, I have three different options on how I'm going to display this link. I have text, I have button. I'm going to copy this real quick. I have text, I have button, and I have image. Text is going to give us that normal hyperlink option here where it's plain text that's blue with an underline. And when I click on it, it's going to turn purple. That's your normal kind of hyperlink that you see all over the place. You do have the element style controls over this, where you can say, I want to align this to the center and apply, and it'll move it to the center. And that way it's nice and centered on the email itself to make it very prominent. If I do something like a button, I'll come up here and link to that same event. I can do a button, and this will be, you know, a nice clickable button that will show up. This is another option that we will talk about. This will not always show up exactly like this when we send it out. I know I keep calling out Google and Outlook, but they really do kind of insist on putting their own spin on the aesthetics of emails that they receive. And they have their own style that they apply to things that are quote unquote buttons. And so because we send this out and we call it a button, they notice that in the email and they actually override the design of this. And we'll talk about what that actually looks like when you send it in a minute here when I'm showing you how to preview these emails. But if you want to send a button, normally I would actually just create my own buttons if you have someone that can do things like that. And I will point them to point that to you. So I will show you how to kind of create your own buttons here in just a little bit. But you do have the option for a button. And then the last option here for how to display your link is an image. And you can select, just like we did before, any image that is in your website, or you can even upload new images from your computer. And the image itself will then be a clickable link where if they click on that image, you can then go into the system. It'll then link them to wherever you've pointed them in this link address. So yeah, so that's how you build a link. It can point, it doesn't have to point to events. It can point to things like external pages where you can plug in your own URL. So you could point them to things like google.com, or if you're working with an outside club, you can point them to their club website. And you have all sorts of things. The rest of them, except for this external page option, all of these are going to point to different places in ClubExpress. So you can point them to a specific document. You can point them to a donation fund. You can point them to a specific custom page, or you can point them to a built-in module. And if you choose different options here, it's going to present you with different tools to choose from. So you'll see if I'm pointing them to a custom page, I can choose what category of custom page I'm pointing to, and you select the specific page. So you can get very specific with where you want to link to, or you can even type in your own address. Another type of link is this file link option here. This is going to be very similar to building a link and pointing it to a document. The difference is this file link option only points to the document library. And the one big difference, and you'll say, you know, a lot of you might say, well, then why don't I just use the link tool? The big difference is if I have a document on my computer I want to link to, if I use this link button element, I would need to go to my document library and upload it first before I'm able to link to it here. Whereas if I use this file element type, and I click on the pencil, you have two options when you click on the pencil for your file link. You have attach an existing document where you will look through your document library. And those of you who have used a document library, this folder structure will look familiar. And you can come in here and select a document that you want to link to, and it will then link to that document. And just as before, we can then, you know, change our alignment to center if you want to have it show up in the middle. Or we can choose to attach a new document. And if we choose attach new document, this is the document upload wizard that you'll see when you are uploading a document to the document library. And you'll go through here and choose what folder of the document library you want to add this file to. You'll give the file a title, all the other document information, but this will let you pull a document right here, select document. This will let you upload it from your computer directly into the document library. So you don't need to leave the email editor in order to add a document that you want to send out to your members or to your committees, wherever you are sending this email. And once you've done that, when this email gets sent out, this link, when they click on it, will open the website and begin downloading that document. This is where we're going to take a quick second and talk about the kind of the fundamentals of documents. A lot of people ask and say, hey, I don't want people to go to the website to download the document. This is something I talked about earlier where we can't send out those attachments. We have to do this as a link in order to make sure that the email gets delivered. When they click on the link, if the document is set up as a public document and it's in a public folder, it should just download immediately, and that's all they have to do. If it is in a members only or admin only folder, they will have to log in if they are not already logged in. There is no way around that. So if it is a members only document, if it's some sort of, document that is sensitive that they need to prove their membership in order to view, they will have to log in. Once they log in, it'll continue the download as normal. So just keep that in mind when you're sending out documents. If it's something that's not, a sensitive document, it's something that anyone can see, consider putting that in a public folder so that they don't have to log in order to access it. Down here, we're going to take a quick second to talk about something kind of fun. This is something we can do. You'll see here, I've got this little animated GIF here that's flipping back and forth between holiday party and Happy New Year. You can send animated GIFs in an email. So a lot of people want to attach videos or something like that to emails. If you embed a YouTube video into an email, it will almost 100% of the time get blocked by whatever email provider you're sending it to. Fortunately, GIFs, animated GIFs, or GIFs, some people say, those can be sent out without much of a problem because they're just image files in a different format. And so here I just made a very simple GIF that goes back and forth between a holiday party and Happy New Year. And I uploaded this just like I would with any other document. So if you have a GIF downloaded to your computer or a GIF already loaded into your website, you can load those in just like you would an image. It's the same process. But once you have it in your site and you upload it here, you can just pull it in and you'll see, I just, went to, I think this is called holiday. I don't know where it popped up. But you can just upload a GIF here, just like you would a normal image, and it should play. And then when you send the email out, and we'll take a look at this email that I actually sent out, and I'll show you that it does work on just about every email provider that I've tested. So you can send GIFs out, but not necessarily videos. So that's one kind of way to zhuzh up an email when you're sending it out. I mentioned earlier about buttons and kind of making your own buttons. So on this email that I sent out, I added 2 buttons that point to the same place. Both of these buttons, when you click on them, are going to take us to the event calendar, but they are handled slightly differently. This is a button made using the ClubExpress button tool. So when I'm creating the link, I chose button. This one I did slightly differently. This one is not a ClubExpress button. This is an image. And all I did is I used, Microsoft Paint. I wanted to keep it very, low level. And I went in and I made a blue kind of rectangle. And then I typed white text on top of it. And I saved that as an image. And then I just used that as an image link. And that is a way to get around what you'll see in just a second here, which is, sometimes when you use these ClubExpress buttons, the formatting won't go through perfectly. But if you use an image link of a button, you can get around that, and this will always show up correctly. The final element I'm going to show on this email that I used is the social networking element. That's this option right over here. You don't have to configure this at all. All you have to do is just drag and drop this in, and it's going to grab your social networking options. You can then, align it to the center or change the sizes if you need. But these are going to automatically pull from your organization's already set up social networking. I can take you on a quick trip over to our control panel. If we go over here under the communication section, social networking, that's where we set up our social networks, Twitter and Facebook. And so because I have Twitter and Facebook set up, if we go back to our email, Twitter and Facebook are the social media options that get pulled in here. So once we've gone through and we've put in our images, we've put in our text, we've done our element styles, we have an email body crafted to our liking. The next step is to, a lot of you might think, okay, it's ready to go, but I always hesitate to just hit send, because a lot of people want to make sure that, does it come with these black bars? Is the spacing correct? Are my fonts correct? There are plenty of ways to test an email before you send it out. The first way is this preview email button up here at the top, right next to our distribution list. We have preview email. And if you click on preview email, this is going to show you what the email will look like when you send it out. You see, there's my 2 register buttons. There's my social media link. There's my little animated GIF. I will go ahead and forewarn you, in my opinion, this is a little bit misleading. This is exactly what we send. This is the formatting that we send to the email provider. The problem is, as I've mentioned several times already, Some email providers, Outlook, Gmail, Yahoo, AOL, they don't always receive everything perfectly. Sometimes they don't receive certain colors. Sometimes they don't receive background colors. Sometimes they don't receive horizontal lines. And we want to double check and make sure this is exactly accurate. So instead of just hitting preview and trusting this, I always recommend you use this option down here at the bottom where we have our save options. We have save and continue, save and close. Those are just, if you want to save your progress. We have save as template, which we'll talk about, but this save as tests or send tests right here is a very important one. When you hit send tests, it's going to pre-fill your email address, and then you have the option to send to up to 3 other email addresses. So you can fill in 4 email addresses here. And what I do is I send like one to my Outlook, which would just be, Devin, and I'll send one to my Gmail. I'll send one to my Hotmail. I'll send one to my AOL. I have a bunch of different email accounts so that I can test the way it'll look on each email platform. And if you hit send tests, it's going to send an email to that address without sending this whole email out. And it'll send an exact copy of this email to those addresses for you to then preview. And so let me go ahead and I'm going to change my screen real quick. I have an email pulled up. So this is my Outlook pulled up, and you'll see this is what the email will look like in my Outlook. And so I sent this before I changed some of the colors. So some of the fonts might look different because I've made some changes while we were poking around at it. But here you'll see most everything looks pretty much correct. There's my budget link. There's my animated GIF that people can, pause and play. And so this, this shows the animated GIF works in Outlook. But then down here, we'll notice here's that ClubExpress button, and Outlook has stripped the formatting off of the button. So that's formatting that we sent out, but unfortunately the formatting got stripped out by Outlook. But this register button, this is the one that I did as an image. This one stayed the same because I uploaded it as an image. It came through just fine. So this is a way where I can actually come in here and confirm this is exactly the email your members, the people you send this email to, would be seeing if they see it in Outlook. I can do the same thing for Gmail. I can do the same thing for Yahoo. This is one way, this is one step that I always recommend people take, which is they come through here and they take a look at it before hitting send. And so that's one extra step you should always take. And then you can come back here and readjust or change fonts to make sure that things are working correctly. And you can come in here and say, oh, that link button didn't look great. I'll take that out using this little trash can option. And I will leave this image icon here because I know that works better. The other option we have is we're going to talk about really quickly is templates. Once you have an email set up the way you like it, this is a lot of work we put into a pretty decent looking newsletter. If we don't want to put this much work into it every single time, you can come down here and hit save as template. Once you hit save as template, you're presented with 2 options. You can save it as a new template and give it a name, or you can say this is an update to an existing template. And if you click replace existing template, this will show you all of your current templates and where you can go to change them. So this is my webinar newsletter. And if I hit save here, all of the changes that I made to this email will now overwrite my existing newsletter. So if I come back to my emailing page, let's take a look at what saving a template looks like. And I hit add an emailing. This is my blank page, and I can then start fresh by dragging elements over. But if I don't want to do all of this, manually, I can come over here to this middle option, templates, and I can say, there's my webinar newsletter. And if I drag that over, it's going to pull in everything we just did, all the text, all the images, the animated GIF, the button, all of it gets automatically filled in for me. And then all I need to do to create a new newsletter is come in here and actually change the content. So I can call this, January. And now I'm beginning work with a lot of the, elbow grease already done for me. If you want to update a template, you don't have to come in here and start a new email and then save it as a template. You can always go back to your emailing administration page. And on this configure option over here on the right-hand side, you can go in here and choose configure templates. And you'll see all of your existing templates. So there's my webinar newsletter. I can either create a new template, and that will just take us into our email body editor where all of the things I just showed you would apply. I can also hit the pencil here And this is our email body editor where I can make all of those changes, just like we just showed you, except for we're, instead of creating an email, we're just making changes to our template. And at the bottom, we have the option to just save the template or cancel. You'll also see some of our system templates where we can come in here and we can make copies of existing templates. These are a handful of templates that we have created for you. And you are more than welcome to come in here and say, you know, oh, I want to take a look at this important news template. If I make a copy of it, there's a copy of important news, and the system templates are ours. We always keep those exactly the same. You can't make changes to those. But if you click the little clipboard option, it'll copy. So there's a copy of important news, and then I can make changes to this copy all I like. So I can put in my own logo, put in my own images. There's all sorts of different, you know, content here that I can start with to create my own email templates. While we're on this configure page, I will show you one more configuration. There are two different options for styles. The last two options down here on this configure page are email default styles and email custom CSS. Just like with the HTML element that you can use, this CSS option should be reserved for people that know a bit of HTML or CSS code. But if you do, you can edit your email CSS. And this is a little bit of you know, style sheets code that will get sent out with every email you send, and it will apply whatever style you put in here to the emails that you send out. I'll go ahead and reiterate one more time. Make sure that if you're going to make changes to this page, that you are familiar with, you know, CSS and HTML. If you have questions about that, you can reach out to us. One thing we don't support is if you make, you know, CSS or HTML changes, we don't, you know, modify that code for you as a part of ClubExpress support. So if you write code, then you're, you know, we do say, you know, you're a little bit on your own with the code itself. But fortunately, if you need to come in here and make any changes, you always have this reset button to, you know, blank out any code, and it's not going to send the CSS out for you anymore. One tool you can use, even if you're not a, you know, super tech savvy person, is this default styles. This is where you can come in and kind of preset how you want your emails to look. So you have this drop-in web styles, and what this will do is it will pull the style of your website and apply it to your emails. Or you can come in here to manually say, when I use heading 1 on an email, I want it to be Arial black. And heading 1 is a option that you have when you're looking at the font controls in your text editing sections. You also have things like your background and your page borders. You can come in here and say, you know, I want the background color of all of my emails to be a certain color. This is one where I always tell people, again, I leave this alone because a lot of the email recipients are going to wipe out the background color. Some may receive it, so it might work sometimes, but a lot of times that background color can look a little bit weird if you send it out. You can add borders, and those usually do work. So you can say, I want all of my emails to have, you know, a red border on them, and I want that border to be, you know, 10 pixels thick, and all of your emails will be contained in, you know, a red border at that point. Same with the email body. You can control the font of your plain text that you type in. Same with links. You can control what your links look like, and your buttons. Email buttons, you can add formatting to your buttons. Again, a lot of times Outlook and Gmail are going to strip this formatting out. So, you know, your mileage may vary on customizing the email buttons here. Some providers do respect buttons, but most will strip the controls out of it. All right, so let's talk about the actual emailing page once we've sent the actual, like, you know, viewing emails once we've sent them out. So you'll see I've already sent out our newsletter here. So I sent this, that's what we viewed earlier. Once you've sent it out, most of your emails will get it, most of your members will get it in their inbox. If someone, you know, deletes that email or wants to review sent emails, you do have the option to put this module on your menu. So if you go to your control panel and you go to your website tab, you have this menu option, and we have several training videos and such on how to manage your menu. But one option you have to add to your menu is the emailing module itself. When a member clicks on the email module, which I have named Email Archive, they're going to be presented with any emails that are set up to view. And so if we take a preview of this, here's our newsletters, and here's our event announcement. We're going to talk about this email in just a second. But if we click on this newsletters option, there's that email that we just made and sent out, and it'll say who sent it. Martin sent it. The subject was the December newsletter. It was sent out on this date. And then here's the body of the email that they can come and preview. And there's my animated GIF. And we're looking at this on the website. So they don't have to go to their inbox to view emails that are sent out. If you want an email to be viewable on your email archive page, you have to do two things. First off, you have to come to your email options under communications. The category that you want them to view, if we come over here to our newsletters category, you have to check it as viewable. So if you edit a category, you have to choose this allowed on view email page. If this is unchecked, none of the emails in that category will show up on that page. The second thing you have to do is when you send the actual email, in the basics, there is a allowed on view email page. So you can say, I want all of my newsletters to show up, but not this one. Or you can say, I want them all. It should be checked by default if your category is set to view on email page. Once you've sent it out, you can come back here and click on this pencil again. So this is a sent email that we're clicking on the pencil for. And this is where you can come and modify the newsletter. Or if we say, this email actually has content in it that no longer applies, we can say, don't show this anymore. And so that's how you get stuff to show up. You have to make sure that the category is set up to show on that view email page, and you have to set up for the actual individual email to say show on email. But if those are both checked and someone goes to this emailing page, we're going to have this show up here where we can click and view that email. We're running close to time here. So in order to make sure that there's time for Q&A, I'm only going to go over one more email type, but something we get requested a lot is people will say, hey, I have a really beautiful PDF that I want to embed in an email, and I want everyone to see that PDF. Just like I mentioned earlier, if you actually were to put the style of a PDF, if you copy and pasted the whole PDF in, most email providers will strip that out. There is a fun way to get around that, which is you can either export that PDF as an image. So, Adobe Acrobat has a way to save the entire page as an image, or you can just take a screenshot. On PC users, if you click, Windows Shift S, it'll let you take a screen grab of whatever you're looking at. And then you can save that as an image. And then what I do is I usually just create an image link and I put it in. So I'm going to show you one more email that I made. Go over here to our event announcements. And so if we click on the pencil here, oh no, I already sent it out. Let's go take an eyeball look. Let's copy it. There we go. All I've done is I've used one element. I went over to my email, I grabbed link button, and I chose to use an image link. And the image I selected was a very large flyer that I had pre-made. And so because it's so large, it's going to fill in the whole email body. And this isn't anything, there's no code, there's no nothing. This is just an image of a flyer that I had pre-made. And so I can take this flyer and I can put it in my email and I can link to, all I did was I made a link to, an upcoming event. And this whole image becomes a link. So if I click anywhere on this image, it's going to take me there. And when they get it in their inbox, if we go back to our email archive, this is what they see in their email. They see one big image. It's got all the information you want to share. Now, the one limitation here is they can't copy and paste out of here. But if they click anywhere on this image, it's going to take them to that upcoming event. My internet's loading a little slow. I did click on it. There we go. So clicking on that image takes them to the event. So if you have a flyer that you want to send out, that you had someone in your organization who, say, is a graphic designer and they make beautiful flyers, and you want to have like something with like this nice wood background with pictures of vegetables, and it's all like kind of one big image, you can do that. That's something people ask about a lot. The easiest way is just to make sure that you're uploading it as an image file and not, say, like a Word document or a PDF, because those things tend to get stripped out. But you can do like one big image and send an email that is just one big image. All right, Sam, do you have, I'm sure you have a million questions for me.
There were no questions whatsoever.
Oh,
Just
great.
kidding.
All right. See you
Um,
next time.
well, bye everyone. No,
No,
kidding.
no, no.
So one of the questions that came up a lot has to do with spacing.
Hmm.
So there were a lot of folks who mentioned that there were spacing issues that would insert themselves between paragraphs, and that it wasn't necessarily consistent across the board. Are there any tips that you have to offer to troubleshoot spacing issues?
The first thing is something that I touched on very lightly, which is when you have, let's say, a paragraph, especially if you copy and paste it from somewhere else. Um, if you just highlight it all and hit this strip formatting, you'll see it breaks out all of my formatting. And now this is all just one solid block of plain text. And then I can come in here and let's say, where's my break? There it is. Hit enter twice. And that's going to remove any behind the scenes formatting that snuck its way in from a copy and paste. Um, so that is one way to quickly, get rid of any potential behind the scenes um, formatting that might show up. A lot of times those spacing issues come from copy and pasting. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes if we make a paragraph here and we save this and then we add another element, the spacing between these two elements is going to be larger than the spacing between these two paragraphs because we've got things like padding. So there's going to be 10 pixels of extra padding. But within one text column, if your test emails are showing inconsistent spacing, it should fix it just by highlighting all of the text that has inconsistent spacing and stripping out all of that formatting again, because that's going to take out everything behind the scenes. And the only thing it's going to leave in is plain text. And then you just put the same type of spaces, just, whatever carriage return you want to use. So those are, the same type of spaces between each of these. And so because we stripped everything out and used the same type of spacing, that should just show up as intended. You will have to then go back and, add whatever italics or links or anything, that'll also strip out hyperlinks. It'll strip out everything but the text. So starting from a point of no formatting is a very good way to make sure that you're not going to have accidental spacing problems.
All right. And some other questions. So there were a couple of people who had mentioned some issues creating email links if they're working with the email editor on an iPad. And I wasn't sure if that was a recommended way to create emails or if we do recommend that you do them on a desktop.
So that is, yeah, that's kind of a difficult point for ClubExpress. Our administrative tools are built focused on desktop or laptop. We don't have a lot of support. Some things do work just fine on an iPad and some things don't. I do know that both the ad hoc reporting tool and the email building tool are two that tend to struggle on iPad. We try to put out updates, but the problem is that, Apple puts out updates for the iPad operating system every couple months, and there's really not a way for us to keep up with all of their updates. We don't have quite the same size development team that Apple does. So it's easy for us to keep up with Windows because those usually stay fairly the same. A lot of those browser tools are pretty, set in stone, but mobile devices get so many frequent updates that there's just almost no way for us to keep up pace with them. So it's frustrating for me to say this, but when you're editing in the ClubExpress email editor, you're usually better off using an actual computer. We like I said, we do try to keep up to date with that, but we are frequently outpaced by mobile device updates.
And another, I'm going through the question. So one extra thing would be, can you show how to embed a news article using the HTML element and the news article icon for folks who want to create a news article and then just slap it into an email?
If you want to link to a news article, I would say that you would want to just link to it with an element link. If you're wanting to use embed code, so those of you who are familiar with HTML, if you're wanting to use an iframe to reference something outside of the email, I'll go ahead and say you really shouldn't do that. Iframes, when you send out an email, are almost always going to get blocked as spam. Because what iframes do is they reference another website within the email itself. So we're not actually sending the content that you're sending out when you use an embed tool. So that's something I would just say, don't do that, because that email is not going to get delivered properly. So that's one of those times where you're better off just building a link and say, hey, you can copy and paste like the first paragraph. So like if I'm going to do a news article, what I would do is I would come in here and let's pretend that this is the first like paragraph of my news article. And then I would add a link at the end here. And I would point my link to, where's my news? I thought I had a news article option. Oh, I would just link to news. Articles. Oh, I might not have news articles turned on. That might be a part of the problem. But you can create a link to a news article. Let's just pretend that this is my news article. And then the actual text of link, I would say, read more here, ... And now there's a link at the end of that where they can click to say, oh, I do want to read more. And they can click that and it'll take them to that news article to continue reading the rest of the article. But if you're going to use the HTML tool to kind of like write your own code to embed something else from somewhere else from a different website or from your existing website, that is kind of an email no-no.
Right. So a lot of the questions were things that you definitely went over. So I just want to reiterate that we'll have this video up on our YouTube channel. So you'll be able to review everything that Devin went over today. So, a lot of things with, stripping formatting and adding images and working with images in the emails. You'll be able to go through all of our entire webinar, maybe at a slower pace. And then you can also make sure that you catch our webinar from a couple of weeks ago, which was sort of building block for today's webinar. Oh, and there was one more question. Sorry, Janet, thank you for reminding me of that. Could you talk a little bit about adding anchors and links to anchors within email? So they'll obviously function the same way that they would within custom pages that you might be creating. And if you aren't familiar with anchors and links to anchors, you might use them to maybe put a handful of links at the very top of your newsletter to link to specific portions further down in your newsletter.
Precisely.
Maybe, yeah. So could you show us just kind of quickly what that might look like in the link builder?
Sure. So yeah, so like if we're gonna, so let's an example here. We've got our what's covered, board election, budget meeting, upcoming events. And upcoming events is all the way down here. It's a rather tall email. If we wanted a link that would take people straight down to here, we can come up to our text up here. And upcoming events, we can just copy this. And I will just do events. You want to do a one-word anchor. You don't want to do any spaces. And you would, create a link here. I'll replace this with a link. And the link type is going to be link to anchor. And the anchor name is going to be events. And the link text is just going to say the same thing, upcoming events. And that's going to replace this text with upcoming events. Now, I'm not going to take the time to go through and reformat all of this, because when I save this, you'll notice this no longer matches. So we would want all of these to be links so that they all match each other. But I'm not going to take the time to do that to these two also. But once you've got that set up as a link, you'll notice when I hover over it, my mouse turns into a little finger, meaning I can click on it. And if we go down to our upcoming events, we can click the edit here. And I don't need to actually make this a link. All I'm going to do, I'm going to put my cursor here, and I'm going to create an anchor, and an anchor is invisible. It doesn't actually show up as a hyperlink or anything like that. When I click this tool, instead of link to anchor, I'm going to create an anchor, and I will give it the same exact name. Now, the reason I'm using copy and paste, and I do recommend you copy and paste, because if I have a space at the end, or if I do like event and events, it's not going to work. I need to make sure that they are exactly the same. And now there is an invisible link right here at the end of this. You can't see it. It doesn't show up. It's just the anchor right there. And now it should work in this page, I think. Yep. So now clicking on upcoming events jumps me straight down to where I put that anchor. And I can do that a couple more times. Boop. And that's going to jump straight to this page. There are fancier ways where you can link to a different page and anchor on the target page. That does require a little bit of manual HTML. So if you're interested in that, you can use the HTML editor and learn how to do that. But that's something that's a little bit beyond what we would cover in one of our webinars. But if you're looking to just link to a further point in the actual email itself, that is how you do that.
Kind of one of those extra little fancy things that if you haven't done it just yet, your members might be like, ooh, that's exciting. Gives your emails a little bit of a facelift. And yeah, if you're concerned about the length of your emails, you want to slap as much in as you can on a monthly basis, especially if you think that that's the only time that your members are actually looking at your communications. Make it easy to navigate that whole email. And a couple people asking when we'll have the recording of this on our YouTube channel. It'll be available before the end of the week. So I think that the questions have died down.
All right. Thank you for hanging out for a slightly longer webinar. We will see you in December for, I think, 1 or 2 webinars. And I'll see you next time. Thank you so much. And we'll have this recording up pretty soon.